Welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining us on the Beyond Barriers podcast. We are thrilled to have you here. You and I were chatting a bit before we started recording, and really loved your energy and you talking about your journey so far and being in an industry that very few women experience, and we want to get more women in there. So let's talk a little bit about your journey and how did you find yourself in this industry? And just letting us know, what has it been like so far?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, very much under the veil of apartheid, which I think really shaped my view of the world and helped me think through, what I wanted to achieve in the future. And I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs with a strong sense of justice, integrity, and really fairness.
Mm-hmm.
I initially always thought that I would actually go into politics because I just saw so much injustice around me. I wanted to change things. I wanted to change the status quo. But I think after, a small stint as the junior mayor of Cape Town, I realized pretty fast that if I wanted to get things done and change things, it wasn't going to happen in politics. And I think that kind of got a fire started in me of, you know, what can I do? How can I see the wide world? And growing up in a family retail business, I was always kind of thinking about like how people think, why they make the decisions they do. I was very, very fortunate. It was quite unusual, but I had a bee in my bonnet about seeing what else was out there. And at 17, I left home to go study at Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Arrived there on campus, had definitely never heard what venture capital was when I arrived there, I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
And really just drank from the fire hose and just exposed myself to everything there was to see. I, arrived there, literally knew no one, and just found amazing, interesting, smart people. After college, I landed what I thought then was my absolute dream job at the Boston Consulting Group in New York, where I got to travel the country and work with amazing women and men and amazing brands, across the US.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I realized pretty soon that I wanted to actually do, not just consult, and followed actually some incredible people. And this is something that maybe we'll talk through later, but followed some incredible people who I admired, and joined limited brands. So Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, and just had the most amazing time learning about really the average American consumer. We went into her home. We really thought about her as a person, and just worked with smart, interesting people. But I think, while I was there, I did start to see a little bit of a glass ceiling as a female, and knew that I wanted to go far. I wanted to do more. I didn't want to stay at the same level. So I applied to business school, and during business school, I was very fortunate to meet Tom Stenberg, who was the founder of Staples, and he was investing in retail and consumer companies out of a venture capital fund. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but he really took me under his wing. I, traveled all over with him, sometimes, carrying his bag and jumping into the car and doing whatever, but really learning from him, and ended up joining there full time. And really loved that. But then, life circumstances changed. I met a partner. He happened to be South African, and we really had the pull of home. So moved back to South Africa, spent 10 years building and operating businesses, really understanding how hard it is to start new things, build new things. I know you're someone who's built something from scratch. It's not easy to do that. And loved doing that, but was starting to get itchy feet. Serendipitously met my now partners, Eric, David, and Micah, who convinced me to pack up home with 3 kids in the middle of a pandemic and move to New York City, which was wild.
Yes.
So right now I am very fortunate to be in New York City at an incredible seed stage venture capital fund, working with fantastic people and spending my day talking to brilliant entrepreneurs who are changing the world and building incredible companies. So feel very fortunate. So to kind of go back to your original question, no, I never thought that I would be a venture capitalist in New York City. And I had a circuitous journey towards where I am now, but I wouldn't have done it any other way. And it's been a wild and fun journey.
I love that. And wow, that's an amazing journey. And there's so many lanes that you changed in terms of, if you even think about it, like industry and, just area of focus. And so, and with that, I'm sure, like you said, you even mentioned sometimes you kind of dove into it, you didn't know what you were doing. And for some people, and a lot of the women that we work with in our program, those types of things, the uncertainty usually stops them, right? And I'm sure there were moments maybe that you may have had, moments of self-doubt or just, pausing for a moment. But what gave you that courage to kind of just move forward despite the uncertainty? Like, do you feel like it's something pre-wired, or is it something that you just, said, you know what, I'm just going to choose faith over fear?
I love that question. I think one of the key things to being able to jump is really seeking out people who believe in you. And I think that has always been, I've been fortunate to have people who believed in me, open the door, even when I didn't believe in myself. And I will say that many times when I would start a new job and be like, and I remember vividly calling my sister, going through the Park Avenue tunnel, leaving the office at like 3 a.m. in the morning and being like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I've said it to myself quite a few times in my career now. And I realized that it's okay, and that the alternative is being bored, and I hate being bored. So, I think pressure is a privilege, being challenged is a privilege. And if you don't take, I've also believed that if I'm not growing, I should leave a job. And every time I've left, it's because I've stopped growing. So
Yes.
it's scary, and it's sometimes comfortable to be comfortable. But I feel like if you're not growing, then you need to take a jump. So, and I think you also just have to know that most of the time, most people don't know exactly what they're doing, and almost everyone is figuring it out. And I think that's something that, as I've gotten older, I've gotten more comfortable with. In the beginning, I always just thought I was the dumbest person in the room and would be so fearful. And now I realize, you know what? We're all figuring it out. We're all learning. We're all growing. We all have weaknesses. We all have strengths. Lean into your strengths, but also own your weaknesses. When I start a new job now, or when I start doing something new, I will very openly say, this isn't my strength. I'm working on it, but really that's not my forte. Whereas, earlier in my career, I'd be scared that someone would figure out that I'm really, really not great at admin, or not great at whatever it may be. And I think, as you being aware of your strengths and your weaknesses allows you to take those jumps, because you actually know what you're going to need to work on. And also, where to lean into the areas that you are more comfortable with, and where you can feel a little bit more confident. So I don't think there's a silver bullet. And sometimes I've taken the jump and then been like, what have I done? So know that that's okay too.
Yes. I love that. And I loved what you said about, if you're not growing, it's time to jump. I mean, there's the old adage or the saying that if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So, you've got to keep growing. Can you talk a little bit about, you talked about seeking out individuals who've done it, some people who will support you. And I find that women sometimes don't leverage their community as much as they should when it comes to their career or learning, right? Because like you said, for that fear of being found out or being thought to be, not smart enough, or you should know this. But in what ways do you keep learning? How do you really, like that whole just-in-time learning? How do you learn? What is it that you do? Do you bury yourself in books or, podcasts or whatever? Or do you like, how would you reach out to somebody and how would you identify them?
So I will say when I was coming to the US to start, new career, new industry, I definitely did listen to a ton of podcasts, and it was really helpful to kind of hear other people's perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also really having a tribe and
Mm-hmm.
having those people who you can be vulnerable around, who you can go to, who are really friends for life. So, there's like the friend piece. And I think really
Mm-hmm.
having those people who you can kind of call and ask. Look, then I think there's also the very real kind of network building and reaching out to people. And something that I have found coming into the New York venture capital community, the
Mm-hmm.
women have been beyond lovely and welcoming and inclusive. And I now, I do office hours at Harvard
Mm-hmm.
Business School, and like I really try to pay back where I can. I think it's also being cognizant of everyone's time staff. Everyone's super busy, so if you are asking for help, and be quite clear about what you want to get out of it, what you need, how much time you need. Make it easy for people to help
Mm-hmm.
you. And I think in the very early days of starting in new roles, new industries, I have been very strategic about my one-on-one catch-ups and my
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one sessions, and will always come with a question, something strategic I want to chat about, a thought, because I think then you can make sure that you're getting constant feedback. The other very real tip I'd actually say, it was something a mentor of mine taught me. At the end of any catch up, I always try to throw in, and do you have any feedback for me? Because I think that then helps you
Mm-hmm.
to know where you need to reach,
Right.
where you need to grow, what help you need. And, if someone does put you in touch with someone, follow up, show up, be respectful of their time, say
Mm.
thank you. Those things really do matter when you're trying to learn a new skill or grow
Mm-hmm.
a new network. And keep growing your network. You should always, especially, I feel like in New York, I'm very, very lucky here. There's just always someone
Mm-hmm.
interesting to meet around the corner.
That's fantastic. And I'm so glad you said that about constantly cultivating that network. Because I think some people, once they get to a certain point in their career, they become, more senior, more seasoned, they kind of, for whatever reason, slow down on the networking piece, or they start mentoring certain individuals, but forget to continue getting mentored themselves and learning themselves, which is really important. And so I want to talk a little bit about, and we touched on it because you are in the venture capital space, this world where for some people it's a bit of a black a black hole, kind of like this abyss that they don't know much about. But it's also, statistically, when we look at the statistics, we know that there are very few women in the VC space. We know that, like, even if we look at the statistics on various startups getting money, very few women get some of that money. Women of color, it's even smaller. And so there's always this misconception that, okay, why would I want to go work in an industry where it's male dominated and there aren't a lot of people who look like me? Or, but in talking to you, I found, very interesting that you were saying it was quite the opposite. Can we talk a little bit about that? I loved how you reframed it, that it's not a negative, it's actually a positive, and it's something that you leverage to have impact and influence. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I feel like it's a real privilege right now to be a female in venture capital. There are incredible organizations supporting and growing and really helping to ensure success. And I see it as an advantage because I am often the only female in the room, and I
Mm-hmm.
have a different perspective and I have different views. And I have the most respectful, incredible, inclusive team who always, are welcoming of that. But even, in when I'm with other I think the industry is changing, that it wants to be inclusive. So I think,
Mm,
I was also in venture capital 10 years ago when it was a lot tougher to be a woman, to be a female, mostly because there was no one really to look up to. There were hardly any females
mm-hmm,
role models. And, I went to Always last year and I chatted to some of the brilliant women there who were standing up on the stage. And I said, it is so refreshing for me to see you there, because 10 years ago when I was in VC, there were no females to look up to. There was no one I could model my life on. There was no one who was balancing, being a mother and working in venture capital. There was no path that had been blazed. And I feel like now that the path has been blazed, now that we can see all these incredible women who've been successful in
mm-hmm.
venture, it's there's an open door and women should feel comfortable jumping in. And I think the other, there is the other interesting thing with venture capital is there is no specific requirement, degree,
Mm,
path to venture capital. There are really so many ways in. I think it's really around, you know, being curious, constantly
mm,
learning, building your network, um, and surrounding yourself with incredible people, because you can come from being an entrepreneur into venture capital, you can come from finance, you can come from operating. There really are so many paths in. So I
mm-hmm.
think women shouldn't look there and say, oh well, there's so few women, it's so hard to get in. They should say, there's so few women, which means there's an opportunity for me to really stand out and
Mm,
be involved, and then pay it forward and fund more women, mentor more future venture capitalists, mentor future entrepreneurs. So
mm-hmm,
I really feel like there's a flywheel building in venture
mm-hmm.
right now for women. So the water's warm, come in, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity.
I love that. I love that. And I want to pull on a thread a little bit that you mentioned, of which I think is extremely powerful. And it's something that you have done quite a bit in your career, of this, like you said, there is no true like degree or requirements or anything of the sort that you need to get into the VC space. And I'm going, if we read the research about women opting out of opportunities because they don't check all the boxes that they think need to be checked, and tend to kind of just say, oh, I've got to get a little more experience here and check these other two boxes before I throw my name in the hat. Whereas our male peers, they only check 20% of the requirements and they'll still throw their name in the hat. Let's talk a little bit more about that, because like you said, there aren't any kind of set requirements that you have to have. How have you yourself put yourself, what would you like if you had to rationalize and say, I'm going to put my name in the hat for, jump into the VC world? What has helped you do that when, a lot of the times maybe you didn't check all the boxes? And like you said, I didn't know what I was doing. What would you tell a young woman who's thinking the VC space looks really interesting? How does she even get her toe in the water?
Oh, I love this question. I think the number one thing is showing a history of conviction
Mm,
in whatever way, whether it has been, building a product at a company where you've taken risks, whether it's, I often say this to women, build your personal brand. It's something
mm,
I wish I had done
yes.
earlier. Have a voice, be outspoken, stand for something, have a viewpoint. And I think, now with platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, name 10 others,
Mm-hmm.
it's become a lot easier to do that. Publish, even if there's 3 people reading it, publish some articles on Medium. What are you thinking about what's going on in the world? What are you interested in? What do you have a viewpoint on that maybe no one else does? So, I think there's showing conviction from track record, showing conviction in terms of thought leadership. And the other way to show conviction, which I realize is, it's not something I was able to do, and it's very privileged to be able to do this, but is write tiny angel checks
Mm,
into, friends you believe in. I think people think, oh, angel investor, I need to be investing $50,000. That is not the case. You really can write tiny amounts. Maybe it's, one vacation that you don't take and you
Mm-hmm.
write a check into someone you really believe in. So I think, if you are fortunate enough to be able to do that,
Mm-hmm.
that is another incredible way to show conviction and track record. And then, it's not an easy industry to get into. I may have kind of in my prior preach
Mm-hmm.
made it sound like, oh, we'll just, jump in. I also acknowledge that it's not that easy to get in. It is quite a closed industry. So I would say there again, you know, network, meet people,
Mm-hmm.
reach out, speak to people who are in the industry, speak to entrepreneurs, and just really grow your network
Mm-hmm.
in that space.
I love that. And you're right. We, like you said, it's always easier said than done. But I think you gave everybody some really tangible, next steps of like networking, identifying people, asking like, how do I break into this? And perspective is so important, like you said, of having a perspective. Everybody has their own kind of area of expertise. And how do you, make sure that you're sharing that and letting everyone know your unique value proposition, right? Of what you want to be known for. So I think that's so powerful. I want to switch gears because you've mentioned before, you have 3 children, correct? You have children, you have, 4-legged children, and you packed up your bags, moved from, South Africa back to New York City. And I know that a lot of women, a lot of times, and if we think about the VC culture and the VC world, I mean, it's intense, right? It's intense. It's, more than just a full-time job. How do you integrate work and life? Because we know, like, we here at Beyond Barriers, we love to say, like, we don't even like to say the word work-life balance. There's no such thing as balance. But how do you integrate work and life? And how do you make sure that you're also putting the oxygen mask on yourself?
You find an incredible partner. So let me give a shout out to my amazing husband, Mark, who without him, I think it would be very hard to do what I do. And really, we see ourselves as a partnership. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
having that partnership is the foundation that's all laid on. I think it's also just honestly letting go of perfection. Like, have my kids got
Mm-hmm.
left at school? Yes, they have. Have they forgotten to bring something on the day they were meant to bring something? Several times. Have they
Mm-hmm.
run out so, I think just knowing that it's I loved how you said it. Like, it's not that it's consistent. It's not that it's consistent balance. I'm never in consistent balance. I have moments of balance, and there are weeks when I'm a fantastic mom, and there are weeks where I'm not the best mom, but I will try and make up for it on the weekend. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a date with my daughter tonight, which I can't wait for. I managed to squeeze in an hour with my husband last night after a work event. So I think it's really finding these moments of sanity, these moments of balance. And it's also being very open with my kids that, sometimes mom, last night I only got home at 10 p.m. But actually communicating with them and them understanding and talking to them about what I do, and why I do it. And then I think the most important thing is really having some guardrails. So, for
Mm-hmm.
me, there are guardrails. I really try to block out from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Can I always do it? No. I try never to commit to more than 2 work evening events a week. I try to keep it to 1. Occasionally there's 2, but I don't think I happen to have a week of work travel where that goes out the window, but in general, I really,
Mm-hmm.
try to stick to that. We have dinner as a family every single Friday night. I joke about it with my team, and I'm very open with my team about it. At 5 p.m. on a Friday, I down tools and I close my computer no matter what is going on. And I cook dinner almost every Friday night with my kids. We sit down. So I think, knowing that you have those guardrails in terms of my oxygen mask, I need 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, just either exercise or breathe or just listen to music and dance or do something in the morning to kind of just
Mm-hmm.
check my sanity and feel like a human being. Sometimes it's a quick stroll through Central Park with my 4-legged child.
Uh-huh.
I vary it, and I'm not prescriptive. And I think that's actually also something that's really important is really, in terms of routine, guardrails, all those things, 80/20, like I don't do the same thing every day. I try stick to a routine, but I also am kind to myself when the routine sometimes does go out the window. So,
Hmm.
I think have a routine so that you can lean on it, but also don't beat yourself up when
Mm.
it doesn't all go according to plan. It doesn't. And know that I have some amazing mom friends, some of you who you might know, who
Yes.
are also constantly juggling. And I think also having that tribe who
Hmm.
you can laugh about the balls you did drop, you can laugh about the things you didn't get to, you can laugh about the chaos that sometimes is your life. I think it's really important to have that tribe and try to
Hmm.
squeeze in a girls dinner every now and then where you can kind of vent to each other about
Yes.
all the things that aren't tied up neatly. So, I hope that was helpful in terms. There's a lot more I could say there, but
No, I love
it's not.
that.
It's messy. I think is the biggest message that I want to give. It's messy and it takes a village. So if people offer to help, let them help. As a mom of twins, it was something I had to embrace. Of
Wow.
like, you know what, you can't do it all. You only have two hands, and I think accept help, and have a few boundaries.
I love that. And I love what you said, there is no such thing as work-life balance, but there's moments of balance, right? And I think another key learning that you shared that is really important is that transparency and that openness with your children of explaining to them and kind of managing expectations that mom's really busy this week. I'm not going to get home, before 10 o'clock. But I'll make it up on the weekend. And, here are these things. And so I think it's, the key thing is managing expectations, both with the key stakeholders at home and at work, like you do on Fridays with your team and say 5 o'clock, I'm shutting down. And I think that's brilliant. It's the guardrails, it's the transparency and communication of managing expectations. And it's like you said, finding those few moments of balance or the oxygen mask for yourself. I think that's just brilliant. And that what I also loved is that you said it's not prescriptive. It's like it gives and takes a little bit. No one day may look the same, but you're always striving for that like 80/20. So I think that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I could keep going, but I know that we're coming up on time. So I'm going to jump to our lightning round questions, which I love because I love to ask these of all of our guests. So we ask these of everybody, and we love to then collect those at the end of every quarter or so to kind of give this best reading list or music list. But let's start with, what book has greatly influenced you?
I will have to say, it sounds cliched, but I am South African, so I can own it. But really, Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. I remember when that book came out, and it
Mhm.
just taught me so much about humility, forgiveness, humanity, seeing the best in people.
Mm.
Most people really want to be good humans. And I think it has always made me try and look for the best in people. So it's actually
Mhm.
something that I need to reread because it was such an impactful book in my life.
Yes, I love that. I'm going to have to definitely dust that one off. And I haven't read it in a very long time, but you're right. It's you learn something new every time and it sticks. I love it. What is your favorite inspiring quote or saying?
I might have to squeeze in two. I'll give you my first one that I've kind of always, I actually think I wrote my college essay on this, but um, it's a beautiful Jewish quote which says, if I am not for me, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And I think I try to
Mm.
remind myself of that. Like, you have to look after yourself, you have to be for yourself. But if it's only for you, then what's it all about? So it's something I think about a lot.
Mm.
In the I'll give a workplace one too, if I'm allowed to.
Yeah, sure.
In the workplace, my team will tease me about it because I say it so often. But I say all the time, what gets measured gets done. And it
Yes.
was a quote from someone else who was very influential in my career. She always used to say that, and now I've taken it and paid forward and use it all the time. So I think it's a good one to just remind yourself, if you really want to get something done,
Hmm.
put some metrics around it.
Love it. Yes. And it's so true. What is one word or moniker that you would use to describe yourself? So you mentioned branding and how important it is. So what is that moniker? What is that word that you would describe yourself?
I would have to say connector. I love I
Mm,
love bringing people together. I love having people in my home. I love hosting women's lunches. I love, I've kind of connected across globes, connected different industries. So I would use that word.
love it. The connector. What is one change, whether it was a habit, a behavior, an action that you implemented that really made your life better?
I experienced something very life-threatening. Before I had my kids, I ended up in the ICU. I was working too hard. I was pushing myself too hard, and I think
Mm,
that health always has to come first. And sleep and exercise just make you a better person. So I really try to prioritize sleep and health. Again, to my prior point, it's not always perfect, and there are weeks where it goes out the window. But
hmm
most of the time, I really try to exercise and sleep, and I try not to schedule meetings before 10 a.m. whenever
mm,
possible, so I can kind of plan my day, get it ready.
I love that. And finally, last but not least, one of my favorites is that let's imagine, Amanda, that you're walking out onto stage and there's a huge crowd, out there, and you need this power song as, to introduce you as you're walking out. What is that power song that would be playing as you walked out onto stage?
I'll have to go with my daughter and we call it our immigration song because we played it a lot when we were going through some really tough times. But it's
Uh-huh.
Rachel Platten Fight Song. And I
Mm,
just really, if you listen to the words of that song, there's some really beautiful words in that song. So
love
sometimes
it.
when we're having a tough day, we'll just play that loudly and blast it. So I'll have to go with that one.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for gifting us your time on this podcast and all of your insightful pearls of wisdom. Now, I know, usually we get, individuals, if we don't ask this and don't put it on our website, is how can someone get in contact with you, especially maybe someone interested in the VC space and wanting to learn what they need to do and whatnot? How can somebody best reach you or follow you or hear more of your perspectives?
Best way to reach me is on Twitter or LinkedIn.
Okay,
My profile's updated there. It's Amanda_Herson, and I generally try my best to respond as soon as possible. Sometimes it takes me to the weekend to actually get back, but I will always respond.
fantastic. Well, we'll be sure to share all of that information on the webpage. And I look forward to staying in touch with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.